There is a moment that many people experience but struggle to articulate, a quiet, persistent emptiness that lingers even when life appears to be going well. You could be surrounded by people, achieving your goals, even smiling outwardly, yet inside there is a void that refuses to be ignored. And the first mistake we make is assuming that this feeling is a sign of weakness or worse, a flaw in who we are. But in reality, this emptiness is not a defect, it is a signal. If you listen carefully, this feeling is not random. It is deeply meaningful. It is the soul communicating in a language we have forgotten how to understand. In a world that constantly tells you to distract yourself, to consume more, to achieve more, to scroll more, this emptiness interrupts that noise. It forces you to pause. It refuses to let you be fully satisfied with what is temporary, and that is not a curse. That is guidance. Scholars like Yasir Qadhi often emphasize that the human being is created with a fitra, a natural disposition inclined toward truth, toward purpose, toward Allah. When that fitra is neglected, when it is buried under layers of distraction and worldly attachment, it doesn't disappear. It begins to ache, and that ache is what we interpret as emptiness. Psychologically, we try to resolve this feeling by filling it. We look for stimulation, for validation, for achievement. We tell ourselves, maybe I just need to be more productive, or maybe I need more success, more recognition. But notice the pattern. Every time you fill your life with something external, the satisfaction fades quickly, and the emptiness returns, sometimes even stronger. Why? Because you are trying to solve a spiritual problem with material solutions. Philosophically, this tells us something profound about human nature. We are not just physical beings. We are not just minds reacting to stimuli. There is a deeper dimension to who we are, a soul that was created with a specific purpose. And that purpose is not fulfilled through accumulation, but through connection. The soul does not crave more things, it craves meaning. It craves closeness to the one who created it. So when you feel empty, instead of panicking, instead of immediately trying to escape that feeling, sit with it for a moment. Reflect on it, ask yourself, what is this emptiness pointing toward? Because often it is pointing away from everything you have been chasing and towards something you have been neglecting. This is why some of the most materially successful people still feel deeply unfulfilled. They have everything the world told them would make them happy, yet something is missing. That something is not a mystery. It is the absence of a connection with Allah. And until that connection is restored, no amount of external success can compensate for it. So the next time that feeling comes, and it will come, don't label it as weakness. Don't try to silence it immediately. Recognize it for what it is, a call back to your origin, a reminder of your purpose, a signal that your soul is seeking what it was created for. Because the emptiness you feel is not there to break you, it is there to wake you, and if you have the courage to listen to it, it might just lead you back to everything you've been missing. If you reflect honestly on your own life, you'll begin to notice a pattern that repeats itself in subtle but undeniable ways. There are things you once believed would finally make you feel complete, milestones you chased, achievements you worked toward, moments you thought would change everything. And for a brief period, they did bring a sense of satisfaction, but it never lasted. The excitement faded, the novelty wore off, and quietly, almost predictably, that same emptiness returned. This is not a coincidence. It is the nature of the dunya itself. We live in a world that is designed to distract and to entice, but not to fulfill. Everything in it is temporary by definition. Your possessions, your status, even your emotional highs. So when you attach your sense of worth or inner peace to something that is temporary, you are building on a foundation that cannot hold. No matter how strong it seems at the moment, it will eventually collapse under the weight of its own impermanence. And yet, despite experiencing this cycle again and again, we fall into the same assumption: maybe I just haven't reached the right level yet. We convince ourselves that fulfillment is just one more step away, one more success, one more relationship, one more achievement. But what we fail to realize is that the problem is not how much of the dunya we have. It is the role we expect it to play in our lives. Scholars like Yasir Qadhi often remind us that the dunya was never meant to be our destination. It is a means, not an end. It was created to serve us, not to define us. But when we reverse that relationship, when we allow the dunya to become the center of our emotional and spiritual existence, we place a burden on it that it was never designed to carry. From a psychological perspective, this creates a constant state of dissatisfaction. You may achieve something significant, but your mind quickly adapts to it. What once felt extraordinary becomes normal. What once satisfied you no longer feels enough. This is not because you are ungrateful. It is because the human soul was not designed to find lasting peace in temporary gains. And this is where the deeper realization begins to emerge. The more you rely on the dunya to fill that inner void, the more sensitive you become to its limitations. You start to feel the gap more intensely, not less. It's like trying to quench your thirst with salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. This doesn't mean that success, wealth, or relationships are inherently bad. Islam does not ask you to abandon the world. But it does ask you to understand it, to see it for what it truly is: a fleeting experience, a test, a tool. When you engage with the dunya with the right perspective, it can bring benefit and even joy. But when you depend on it for fulfillment, it will inevitably disappoint you. So the question is not whether you should pursue goals or seek success. The question is, where is your heart anchored? Because if your heart is anchored in something temporary, your peace will always be temporary as well. But if your heart is anchored in something eternal, then even the fluctuations of this world cannot shake you in the same way. This is why so many people reach a point where they begin to reassess everything they've been chasing. Not because those things were meaningless in themselves, but because they were never meant to carry the weight of your soul's deepest needs. And once you understand this, something shifts within you. You stop expecting the dunya to complete you. You begin to use it rather than depend on it, and most importantly, you start turning toward the only source that is capable of providing what you've been searching for all along. Because temporary things can entertain you, they can even comfort you for a while, but they can never fulfill you. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can stop chasing what was never meant to satisfy you, and start seeking what truly will. Once a person begins to recognize that the emptiness they feel is not a flaw, and that the dunya cannot truly fulfill it, the next question naturally arises: where then does real peace come from? If everything external eventually fades in its ability to satisfy, what remains that can anchor the heart in a lasting way? This is where the concept of dhikr, the remembrance of Allah, moves from being a ritual to being a necessity. Because dhikr at its core is not Arabic, meme Arabic, jim Arabic, rot Arabic, dal repetition of words. It is a realignment of the self. It is the conscious act of reconnecting the heart to its origin. When Allah tells us that hearts find peace in His remembrance, this is not a poetic statement. It is a description of a psychological and spiritual reality. Think about what happens when you are overwhelmed, when your thoughts are scattered, when your emotions feel heavy, when that sense of emptiness begins to expand within you. In those moments, Your mind is often filled with noise, worries about the future, regrets about the past, comparisons with others, doubts about yourself. It is chaotic, fragmented, and exhausting. Dhikr interrupts that chaos when you say Subhan Allah. You are reminding yourself that Allah is perfect beyond any flaw, including the flaws and imperfections you are struggling with in your own life. When you say Alhamdulillah, you are shifting your focus from what is missing to what is already present, training your mind to recognize Arabic, Noon Arabic, Tain Arabic, Meme Arabic, Tet Mahbut, even in difficulty. And when you say Allahu Akbar, you are placing everything that overwhelms you back into its proper scale, acknowledging that whatever you are facing is small in comparison to the greatness of Allah. Scholars like Yasir Qadhi often emphasize that the Arabic, Alif Arabic, Lam Arabic, Af Arabic, Lam Arabic, Ba the heart, is not just an emotional center, it is the spiritual core of the Arabic, Alif Arabic, Lam Arabic, Alif Tat Hams, Arabic, Noon Arabic, Sin Arabic, Alif Arabic, Noon. And like any core system, it requires maintenance. Just as the body weakens without nourishment, the heart weakens without remembrance. And when it weakens, the symptoms appear as anxiety, restlessness, and that very emptiness we have been discussing. What is remarkable is that dhikr does not require a perfect state. You do not need to fix yourself before turning to Allah. In fact, it is the turning itself that begins the process of fixing. Even if your mind is distracted, even if your heart feels distant, the act of remembering Allah consistently begins to soften that distance. From a psychological perspective, dhikr grounds you in the present. It pulls you out of the endless loop of overthinking and anchors you in something Arabic. That Arabic, Alif Arabic, Ba Arabic, Ta, something unchanging. In a world where everything feels uncertain, that stability becomes a source of Arabic, Alif Mamdud Arabic, Rat Arabic, Alif Arabic, Meme. You are no longer relying on circumstances to feel okay. You are connecting to a reality that is beyond circumstances altogether. But there is also a deeper dimension. Dhikr is not just about calming the mind, it is about awakening the soul. The more you engage in it sincerely, the more you begin to feel a shift, not just in your thoughts, but in your perception of life itself. Things that once seemed overwhelming begin to lose their intensity. Things that once seemed insignificant begin to carry meaning. It is as if your entire internal lens is being recalibrated. And this is why people who are consistent in their remembrance of Allah often carry Arabic, Noon Arabic, Wow Arabic, Tain Arabic, Meme Arabic, Noon Arabic, Alif Arabic, Lam Arabic, Sin Arabic, Kaf Arabic, Yet Arabic, Noon Arabic, Tet, Mahbutas, a tranquility that is difficult to explain but easy to recognize. It is not that their lives are free of problems, it is that their hearts are anchored in something deeper than those problems. So when you feel that emptiness, don't underestimate the simplicity of the solution. It is not always found in a grand change or a dramatic shift. Sometimes it begins with something as small yet as profound as quietly saying Alhamdulillah and meaning it. Because the Arabic, Alif Arabic, Lam Arabic, Af Arabic, Lam Arabic, Ba that remembers Allah is never truly empty. And if you fill your heart with His remembrance, you will begin to realize that the peace you were searching for was never far. It was simply waiting for you to turn back to it. As this conversation deepens, a more uncomfortable question begins to surface. What if that emptiness you feel is not just about what you're lacking, but about what you've distanced yourself from? What if it is not only the absence of fulfillment, but the consequence of disconnection? Because at a certain point, we have to be honest with ourselves. The heart does not become empty overnight. It is a gradual process. It happens in small, almost unnoticed steps. A prayer delayed here, a moment of remembrance skipped there, a habit of turning to distractions instead of turning to Allah. And over time, these small choices accumulate until the connection that once felt natural begins to feel distant. Scholars like Yasir Qadhi often remind us that Iman is not static. It fluctuates, it strengthens, and it weakens. And when it weakens, it doesn't just affect your beliefs in an abstract sense, it affects how you experience life itself. The Arabic, Alif Arabic, Lam Arabic, Alf Arabic, Lam Arabic, Ba becomes heavier, less responsive, less alive, and what we often interpret as emotional emptiness is, in many cases, spiritual fatigue. There is a subtle but important distinction here. You can be physically active, mentally engaged, even socially connected, and still feel internally drained. That is because the soul has its own needs separate from the body and the mind, and when those needs are neglected, no amount of external stimulation can compensate for that internal depletion. Consider how naturally a person turns to their phone when they feel bored or uneasy. There is an instinct to escape the discomfort, to fill the silence with noise. But rarely do we pause and ask, why does silence feel uncomfortable in the first place? Why does stillness expose something within us that we are so quick to avoid? Often it is because stillness reveals the state of our connection with Allah. When that connection is strong, stillness feels peaceful. It feels like an opportunity, but when that connection is weak, stillness can feel heavy, even unsettling. It forces you to confront a distance you may not have consciously acknowledged. And then there is the reality of sin, not in a way that is meant to shame, but in a way that is meant to awaken awareness. Every action has an Arabic hams, a totalif Arabic, that Arabic, ought an impact on the heart. Sins, especially when repeated without reflection, begin to create a Arabic, Noon Arabic, Waw Arabic, Tain Arabic, Meme Arabic, Noon Arabic, Alif Arabic, Lam Arabic, Alf Arabic, Sin Arabic, Waw Arabic, Tetma Buta, a hardness. Not always visible, not always immediate, but real, and that hardness dulls the Arabic, Alif Arabic, Lam Arabic, Alf Arabic, Lam Arabic, Ba'es ability to feel the sweetness of Iman, the comfort of Di, Hikr, the peace of Salah. So when a person says, I pray, but I don't feel anything, or I try to remember Allah, but it feels empty, the issue is not that these acts have lost their power. The issue is that the heart has not yet healed enough to receive what those acts are meant to give. But here is the crucial point. This distance is not permanent. It is not irreversible. The same way it was created gradually, it can be reduced gradually. And Allah, in His mercy, does not demand perfection before accepting your return. He simply asks that you take a step. Return to your salah not just as an obligation but as a meeting. Return to the Quran not just as recitation but as reflection. Return to dua not just as words but as a conversation, and most importantly, return with sincerity even if it feels difficult at first. Because the heart, by its nature, is designed to reconnect. No matter how far it drifts, it retains the capacity to come back. And sometimes, that very feeling of emptiness is the first sign that the Arabic, Alif Arabic, Lam Arabic, Alf Arabic, Lam Arabic, Ba is ready to turn again. So don't let that emptiness convince you that you are beyond repair. See it instead as a sign that something within you is still alive, still aware, still seeking. Because distance from Allah may create the emptiness, but even a single sincere step toward Him can begin to fill it. And the moment you choose to return may be the moment everything within you begins to come back to life. There is a particular kind of loneliness that is difficult to explain to others. It is not simply the absence of people, because you can feel it even in a crowd. It is the sense that no one fully understands what you are carrying inside. Your thoughts feel too complex to express, your emotions too heavy to translate into words. And in those moments, the emptiness we have been discussing begins to feel even more intense because it is accompanied by a feeling of isolation. But it is precisely in these moments when you feel most alone that a profound truth begins to reveal itself if you are willing to reflect on it. You are not as alone as you think you are. In fact, from an Islamic perspective, your moments of deepest isolation may actually be the moments in which Allah is closest to you, not in a physical sense, but in His knowledge, His awareness, His hearing, and His response. This is not just a comforting idea. It is a reality that reshapes how you understand your own experiences. Scholars like Yasir Qadhi often emphasize that Allah's closeness is not dependent on your emotional state. You might feel distant, disconnected, even numb, but that does not mean Allah is distant from you. It simply means that your perception is clouded by what you are going through. The reality remains unchanged. He hears every unspoken thought, every silent Arabic. Get Arabic, wow Arabic, va, every quiet hope that you haven't even found the courage to articulate. And this changes the way you interpret your loneliness, because when you begin to internalize that Allah knows you more intimately than you know yourself, loneliness is no longer absolute. It becomes relative. Yes, people may not understand you fully. Yes, you may struggle to communicate what you feel. But there is one who understands without explanation, who listens without interruption, who responds without delay, though not always in the way you expect. Psychologically, this realization introduces a form of grounding that is deeper than social connection. Human relationships, as valuable as they are, have limitations. People get tired, they misunderstand, they have their own struggles. But Allah's attention is not divided, His capacity to listen is not limited, and His awareness of your inner world is complete. This is why turning to Allah in moments of loneliness is not an act of desperation, it is an act of clarity. It is recognizing that the one you have been unconsciously searching for in people has always been accessible to you, without conditions, without barriers. And yet, many of us hesitate. We delay turning to Allah because we feel unworthy, because we are aware of our shortcomings, because we think, after everything I've done, how can I just turn back? But this hesitation is based on a misunderstanding of who Allah is. Allah does not wait for you to be perfect before He listens to you. He does not require you to resolve your struggles before you call upon Him. In fact, it is in your brokenness, in your vulnerability, in your moments of confusion and pain that your dua becomes more sincere, more real, more connected. So, when you find yourself in that quiet moment, when the world feels distant, when your thoughts feel overwhelming, don't rush to escape it. Use it. Speak to Allah, even if your words are simple, even if they are incomplete, even if all you can say is, Ya Allah, I don't even know what to say, but you know what I feel. Because that moment of honesty, that moment of turning, carries a depth that no external solution can replicate. And over time, something begins to shift. That same loneliness that once felt suffocating begins to feel different. It becomes quieter, more reflective, less overwhelming, not because your circumstances have necessarily changed, but because your perspective has. You begin to realize that being alone does not mean being abandoned, because when you truly understand that Allah is always near, loneliness loses its power to define you. And the next time you feel like no one understands you, remember, there is one who always has, and turning to Him might be the most honest conversation you will ever have. If you step back and look at the human experience honestly, you will notice something interesting. People rarely suffer only from emptiness itself. What hurts more is what they do with that emptiness. Some try to escape it, some try to suppress it, and others try to constantly distract themselves from it. But very few people pause long enough to ask a more important question. What if this emptiness is not meant to be escaped at all, but understood and redirected? Because emptiness in itself is not the enemy, it is a space, and the real question is, what do you fill that space with? If you fill it with distraction, it becomes temporary relief. If you fill it with people alone, it becomes dependency. If you fill it with achievement alone, it becomes pressure. But if you fill it with purpose, it becomes transformation. This is where a deeper shift in perspective begins. Life is not simply about removing discomfort, it is about directing it. The same internal restlessness that pushes a person toward harmful distractions can, if properly guided, push them toward meaningful change. The energy is not the problem, the direction is. Scholars like Yasir Qadhi often highlight that one of the subtle traps of modern life is not just sin or negligence, but misdirection. People are not always spiritually dead. They are often spiritually misdirected. They have energy, ambition, emotion, but it is pointed toward everything except the one who can actually give it meaning. So the question is not whether you feel empty. The question is, what are you doing with that feeling? When a person begins to consciously redirect their inner state toward Allah, something very profound happens. The emptiness does not instantly disappear, but it changes shape. It becomes a signal instead of a burden. It becomes a reminder instead of a punishment. It becomes a motivation instead of a void. And this is where purposeful action begins to matter. Returning to Allah is not just an emotional state. It is a set of choices. It is choosing to pray even when you don't feel connected. It is choosing to make dua even when your words feel empty. It is choosing to open the Quran even when your attention is scattered. These actions may feel small, but psychologically and spiritually, they are powerful because they rewire your relationship with your own emptiness. Instead of running from it, you begin to stand in it with awareness. Instead of letting it consume you, you begin to use it as a reminder of direction. And over time, something subtle but important happens. Your internal dependence shifts. You stop needing constant external stimulation to feel okay. You stop relying on temporary highs to avoid internal discomfort. And slowly, your heart begins to experience a different kind of stability, not the stability of having everything resolved, but the stability of knowing where to turn when nothing feels resolved. This is what it means to build purpose instead of distraction. Purpose does not always remove difficulty, but it gives difficulty meaning. It reframes your struggle as part of a larger journey rather than a meaningless weight. And when struggle gains meaning, it becomes bearable in a completely different way. The reality is, most people do not fail because they lack solutions. They fail because they misinterpret their internal state. They assume emptiness means something is wrong with them, so they try to silence it. But if you understand it correctly, emptiness is not a signal of failure. It is a signal of direction. It is pointing you somewhere, and the most transformative moment in a person's life is often not when their circumstances change, but when their interpretation of their circumstances changes. The moment you stop seeing emptiness as something to escape and start seeing it as something to respond to, you regain control of your inner life. So instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this feeling?" a more powerful question becomes, "What is this feeling trying to bring me back to?" Because if it is bringing you back to Allah, then it was never meant to destroy you in the first place. It was meant to redirect you. And once you begin to fill that space with remembrance, with sincerity, with small but consistent steps toward Him, you will realize something important. Not all emptiness is meant to be removed. Some of it is meant to be filled correctly, and the moment you choose what to fill it with may very well decide the direction of your entire life.